community than to equal fairness to the citizens of Bethlehem, no matter what their sexual orientation, whether they are heterosexual, homosexual, or what have you. Excuse me, I was taking a few notes here. I am in the minority of speaking not for one side or the other, although it might be clear that I stand on a certain side. I understand that there is a high risk for suicide in young people who struggle with their sexual orientation. I understand that there are people who discriminate, say, I won't rent my house to a Christian, and these are horrible things. And I think that we all can agree that this is something that is unacceptable in our society. But again, it is my understanding of this ordinance. I would ask you not to vote in favor of this tonight simply because it is vague. And I believe that everyone here believes that it is too vague. I don't think that you can vote on this without proper clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Anyone else on the right? Ms. Pungratz? Anybody else on the right? Okay, Ms. Pungratz? Yeah, we'll come to the center section.
My name is Mary Pungratz, and I live at 321 West 4th Street. I just want to say something that disturbs me here. Discrimination has no address. To me, this ordinance is about guaranteeing everybody, including an old, white, straight lady, fair treatment. If you think I've gone through life without being discriminated against, please come into the real world. It takes, I almost hear reverse discrimination tonight. That's not fair. I am who I am. You are who you are. And I respect all of you. But somehow or other, when do we learn that as human beings, we have the right to be who we are, and we allow you the same right? There are other things that disturb me. The attack on religion tonight disturbed me no end because the federal law and the founding fathers of this country said we are guaranteed freedom of religion. And that means you don't have to be religious. So be very careful when you tread on a given right from the founder of this country. There's a lot going on, and I have to say I've had a good life, and I taught teenagers for a number of years. You are right, it's difficult. When I retired from the school district, Dr. LaFranchi called me in, and he said, Mary, what would you want me to do? What program would you recommend? This is 1985. I said, Dr. LaFranchi, I think you should have a program for teenage suicide. And he kind of looked at me. I said, I'm very serious. I dealt with teenagers for many, many years in the classroom, out of the classroom. It's a difficult age of age. It's extremely difficult today. The media glorifies that which is outside the norm. We expose our children to things that they should not be exposed to. Much of what happens in the area of discrimination comes from what we see on TV, on Facebook, on YouTube. Does it not disturb you that the media glorifies what is not right, what is not healthy? So there are factors involved here. It is not all about person-to-person discrimination. It's about the society in which we live. And until all of us, every one of us, gets together and realizes if we don't help each other, we fail as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Antalix, center section.
Stephen, excuse me. Go back to 5. I had cough or something. Stephen and Talent, 737 Ridge. I have a prepared statement here, but I'm not going to read it. Simply because listening to everyone speak, it took me back. I was going to say I'm probably the oldest person, but one of the oldest persons in this room. And as such, I suffered extreme discrimination, unbeknownst to me. And that was the fact that my parents were born in Europe, resided on the south side, and in those days, people from Europe residing on the south side were considered foreign invaders living in shantytown. And that was projected. I don't know if my father ever crossed the Lehigh River, because to him, the Lehigh River was a social iron curtain. I went to Brockle, and I felt that, not directly, but as a Brockle graduate at Liberty High, it was there. And that, without being spoken as such, relegated to me a second-class citizenship. But it took me 50 years living out of Bethlehem to come back to get a good sense of this. And there might be something lacking in this law that you're talking, the ordinance you're talking about. And this is very subtle. What I'm speaking of is the subtle discrimination which isn't said, but it's there. Now, people who live on the south side, my contemporaries, they were able to move from 5th Street, 6th Street, and 7th Street to 5th, 6th, and 7th Avenue. That made them gentrified. And with that gentrification, the homes that they vacated to get out of the south side were then occupied by Latino people. I chose to live on the south side when I returned to Bethlehem, and those who moved away considered me to be one of them. And I find my neighbors, I have a halfway house next to me, and you wouldn't want better neighbors. But the point I'm trying to make here is that there has been projected onto that new foreign invader in the south side the same discrimination that I had. It's very subtle. It's very subtle. But I hear it. I was told by a good old friend, said, can you imagine that? I'm on West Broad Street and someone next to me is flying a Puerto Rican flag. He was incensed. That belongs on the south side where you are. I mean, so people feel free to vent on me because I'm one of them. So I think with this community, if really look at social equality, is to look at the unconscious, unwritten discrimination that exists in this city. It's very clear. Oh, the crime, I mean, all these things. My parents' associates were included. All the crime of the city of Bethlehem was based upon them, not New York Crime Syndicate. So they took the rap. So I would suggest very strongly to look at this subtle discrimination and come up with some kind of clause saying that all people are created equal, whether you're from Eastern Europe, Puerto Rico, or wherever, or utopia, or outer space. So give it serious thought.
Thank you. Center section. Gentleman in the rear. We'll come over here.
Hi, my name is Tom Boyd. I live at 737 Main Street. I talked to one of the councilmen last year and this year. This is about the Low Brewery Tavern.
That would have to be, Mr. Voigt, respectfully, under the second courtesy of the floors. That's not on the agenda. We have two courtesy of the floors. The first one's for an agenda issue, so you're more than welcome to speak to second courtesy. That's okay. Set the gentleman.
My name's Jim Bryce, 1411 Clover Avenue here in Bethlehem. I have a confession to make. I thought you guys were pandering for votes from special interests until I heard how many of the speakers were outsiders. Oh, that even might be discriminatory. Now, we don't have a lot of money in Bethlehem, so why should we spend any money, on doing things above and beyond what the state does? If you want to spend money that's going to help the maximum number of residents, spend it on the parks and the streets and fixing the light bulbs that used to make the bridge look so pretty. West Side Pool's been closed for how long? The way this is written, the other gentleman was right. A man can go in a woman's dressing room. And what are you going to do if your daughter or your granddaughter is in the dressing room and a guy goes in there? I'm not going to like it. And have a blast when the boys find out in high school they can go in the girls' locker room. That's going to be a lot of fun. I just want to know what happened to common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back.
Hi, my name is Timothy Gardner. I live at 715 North New Street in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I'm also the director of the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer Questioning, Intersex, and Ally Services at Lehigh University, and an adjunct professor at Northampton Community College. When the committee last time heard from one of our students, she spoke about that she makes decisions upon her graduation on where she will choose to live. I do the same as many people here do. Some of us are looking at leaving town, moving to the cities that have protections nearby, and for our students, both at Northampton and those at Lehigh University, many of them are deciding, is this going to be where I make my home? And for those of us that are queer, or those of us that are disabilities, or any sort of different background, are looking at places that have protections and have rights. We have cities that surround us that do have those rights, and I would like Bethlehem to be a place that also has those rights. So I want to urge you to pass that, both for our students, our faculty and staff that are in town, and our community. I speak today also with the support of the university that they also support this bill. I work at one of the few institutions in the area that has protections, that are inclusive. Our policy on campus is a model for other campuses and is looked to for that, for non-discrimination. I am privileged to work at that institution and to have those protections. Many of my fellow colleagues and many of my friends and community members do not have those protections, and I would like them to have those protections as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the center section? Mr. Burntis?
Al Burntis, 1004 Johnson Drive. Just a few comments. I think that with all the amendments that are going to be made to this particular ordinance, the folks in this room ought to be comfortable in the fact that this is going to be passed 7-0 when the time comes. So don't fret, even with all the amendments and everything you're saying, it's going to pass. Nobody should be discriminated against, especially old people like me. I circled age on here. It's there. And I want to tell you something else. It's very, very subtle. And they don't say it out loud, okay? So whatever your affliction or disability is, we all suffer discrimination. And we all fight it all the time. Right, Mary? Mary. But I do want to bring up a couple of issues within the bill. They really are more generic than specific, because I do believe this is going to pass 7-0. I don't believe we should spend any money on this. I don't believe it should be, in here it says may be paid expenses. I'm not comfortable with that. Because there is no limit. There's no limit in here. Once you say expenses, it's, is that a trip to Europe to see what they're doing in Amsterdam? So I'm very uncomfortable with that. It says paid staff may be hired. Now I know the mayor's not going to hire a paid staff according to the city councils, but there should not be a paid staff. I don't think the zoning hearing board has a paid staff. I don't think the planning commission has a paid staff. I think staff in the city is utilized for those commissions. And I think it would be totally appropriate to utilize the staff within the city to support this commission. The third thing is that the members of the commission, I believe, and I said it before, should be appointed 100% by city council. The mayor has, in my estimation, all the right in the world to hire all his direct reports. But I think the city council needs to take a more active role. And it's not just because Mayor Callahan is Mayor Callahan. The mayor, this goes back to all the mayors, this is new rules, basically, a new way to look at things. There ought to be a better way to appoint people to commission and boards. You know, I'm going to start getting repetitive about this, but that's my suggestion. And this should be 100% appointed by the council. And lastly, I would like to see these meetings that occur to be taped, either video or audio. I mean, we've been asking for city council meetings to be audio taped, and it falls on a deaf ear. I think we all need to go to Allentown Audiology because no one reacts to this at all. Now, we have a camera over here that's taping this session, and we get forced to put it up on YouTube. I've been asking for some information from the city, and I find out that, for instance, city council tapes digitally this meeting, audio-wise, but the zoning hearing board uses some antiquated tape machine, planning commission uses some antiquated tape machine. They don't talk to each other. So if I want to hear zoning hearing board tape, I have to come down to City Hall and listen to it, or bring my own machine to tape it. I think the departments in the city ought to work together. I think city council ought to lend the zoning hearing board their digital machine. I think they should lend it to the planning commission, and I think they should lend it to this commission when it gets established. And record every meeting, and I would love to see them get posted on the internet. The legal department okayed posting permits.
We have to stay on topic on the order.
It's on topic. It's called audio taping this meeting, okay? I'm just giving you anecdotal information about the fact that it's working, all right? And I'd like to see this commission meeting audio taped and posted to the web, okay? I hope that you take them all as constructive comments. And thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Shire? Anyone on the left?
Joe Shire, 1890 Eaton Avenue in Bethlehem. 2 weeks ago at the regular council meeting, I suggested that the coverage of the ordinance be broadened to include any addiction that does not impair performance and discrimination pursuant to sexual harassment. Since then, I've come to feel that sexual harassment itself is discrimination when you think about it. It's based on characteristics of the victim, and it's, at the very least, unpleasant behavior. So I think sexual harassment should be explicitly included in the coverage of the ordinance. Now, there's somebody here tonight whose views I respect, who thinks that it's already covered. I'm not a lawyer. I don't think so. In any event, you've got an unusual number of substantive issues to consider, which is going to require much more than the usual analysis, thinking, deliberation, consultation. And we may be told not to depart too far from the template that exists in the other 20 cities in the state. But Bethlehem is a special place, and it can be even more special by providing leadership to the rest of the state. Where is it written that the city of Bethlehem cannot be a leader? I challenge you and I encourage you to craft the best human relations ordinance in the state of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fenning?
Robert Bank, 2830 Linda Street, slight change of pace. Let's talk about agenda item 11A first, the use permit agreement. Special provisions, 2 contributions. During the Finance Committee, the Councilman Evans raised the issue, well, since we're going into a new era of Music Fest and its dual locations, maybe a 3-year contract is not desirable. I totally agree with him. I think we're in a state of flux. And I think limiting it to 1 year makes a lot of sense until such time as you see what reality is. On the same topic, contributions, the Comptroller's Office has raised, I guess, a question about the amounts. When Music Fest first started, I think it was probably appropriate for the local city to consider supporting this fledgling outfit and see how it comes out. It's now 25 years old. About time to take off the diapers. And as a taxpayer, I think the contribution should be zero. I would like to have an analysis of the actual flows in and out of the general fund to prove. I don't want some amorphous $77 million figure of benefits. I want to see how much tax revenue is generated and what expenditures offset it. And if that's within the contribution, so be it. Going on to item special provisions 13, 14, 15, my favorite topic, vendors and business privilege license. I'm glad to see that is in here. My only question is who enforces it. Remember, I have offered for $1 a year to be a city employee and enforce that. But I think it's great that it's in there specifically. Standard provision number 10, dealing with recycling and other environmental things. I think in our other use permits we're much stronger in the verbiage on what recycling must be done. Maybe this is sufficient, but I raised the issue, is this sufficient to require proper and appropriate recycling? The use permit dealing with the south side, it's not clear to me that whether the vendor permit restrictions and monitoring applies to the south side also or not. It's not included in that section. And that is listed as a premise to be covered by that. So I think there are a couple things you might want to think about, especially the longer term commitment and the dollars involved to the city. Going back to the main topic of the evening, 10A, the ordinance, human relations ordinance. The sunsetting amendment provision. I did check with the solicitor of the city council just to make sure I was correct. I did have to amend a little bit my thinking. But if a council this year adopts this ordinance, at the second meeting in January next year, the new council may reverse it. Sunsetting or no sunsetting. So I think that it doesn't hurt to have the sunsetting in here. Don't know if it helps it, but it doesn't hurt it. And I would think you should consider leaving that in there so that at the end of the 3 years you look at what is going on and seeing how effective it is. The other issue that during committee seemed to stir up a lot of ill will was the issue that Mr. Bernatas already brought up, and that is the appointments issue. I have to acknowledge we have a strong mayor form of government. That's the way it is. That's the law we live under. So be it. But I think it is sometimes unfortunate that we don't have a safety valve. For example, on occasion I say things that maybe the administration might disagree with me upon. Maybe most of the time. I am not a protected class in terms of political viewpoints. So the mayor can just throw away the application. In fact, my personal perspective is I wouldn't bother applying for anything in this city because it ain't going to get farther than the mayor. And I would really, really support the 60-40, so it would give me a fighting chance to find at least one council person who might listen to me. Because otherwise, on this commission or any others that have this enforced, I'm stuck. And that is discrimination also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. And the young lady in the first row. Mr. Grubb, and you, young lady. We'll go Mr. Grubb first, then Dana.
Dana Grubb, 2420 Henderson Place. Going to change the thread here for a moment on a resolution 11J, certificate of appropriateness at 564 Main Street. It's a denial. I'd like to encourage you to support the HARP on this particular item. I believe this is the generator that's been installed alongside the Sun Inn. I know I did provide a few of you a photograph of what was installed. I hope everybody's had a chance to take a look at it. This particular generator was installed within about 5 feet of the sidewalk. It's higher than I am tall, and I'm 6 feet tall. And apparently, when they came in to get the appropriate permits, nobody inside City Hall reinforced the fact that this just might be an issue with the HARB. So I would hope that the council would definitely support the HARB's recommendation to deny that particular certificate of appropriateness. Getting back to the topic of the day, personally I'd like to thank a number of the speakers for their openness and their courage. Not all of us are as informed as we like to think we are in certain arenas of life. And I think for many of the speakers to show up tonight and express their viewpoints, it took a lot of courage. There's one particular aspect of this ordinance that I would like to address, and that involves the compilation of the board itself. I agree with a few of the remarks that were made earlier. I think this, first of all, city government is one of the larger employers in the city of Bethlehem. And I think, first of all, you should fix the number. It shouldn't be a range. Whatever that number is that city council can agree on. Number two, I think it's preferable that city council make all of the appointments, all of the recommendations, and all of the appointments. However, in the spirit of compromise, if you get to that particular point, obviously the commission should be an odd number. And I think if you're going to come up with a formula, neither body should have a majority other than the one. So if you decide on 11, it should be 6-5. You decide who should have that majority. If it's 13, it should be 7-6. But my concern is that in those cases where charges may be levied against one of the largest employers in the city, that if that employer is making those recommendations for this particular body, there may be undue influence exerted. And I think that should be a concern of City Council. I also agree with Bill Shirer's concerns about sexual harassment. I believe that that is an issue, and I think it should definitely be addressed and included in this ordinance. It is very discriminatory. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Fear. I live at 1403 Main Street in Bethlehem City. I'm a massage therapist in town, and I also have a couple part-time jobs in town as well. We've mentioned Broader Society a lot tonight, and as it was pointed out earlier, we need to help each other to bring our city, our world, to a better place where it's these little things that it's sad we have to fight for the right to just work as hard as everybody else, or not be fired, or not lose our housing. The message we're sending to our youth was also mentioned, and about the world we're leaving them. The kids have left already, but it's hard enough to be a teenager, and we've all been there. And I think everybody here can understand it's a hell of a lot harder to be an LGBTQ youth. And I'm glad that the suicide rate and everything has finally reached the national awareness. And we've been saying to the kids, it gets better. Don't worry, it's hard now, but it gets better. And it seems like our actions are pretty clearly saying, well, it doesn't get that good. And my notes are jumbled. It's sad to have to fight for the right just to be able to work as hard as everyone else, and employers are going to be happier with happier employees, and it's going to be better environments for everyone. It's sad to have this sunset agreement kind of hanging over everybody's heads saying, well, we might just take this back. at any time, there could be amendments to change the makeup of the council if something's going wrong or something seems to not be working right. There's no need to put the whole thing back on the table in 3 years. I've spoke with several local business owners, and everyone was appalled that it is legal to discriminate in our city based on sexual or gender identity. And they all have signed on an agreement to support this bill. Also because for any kind of discrimination,